What happens when a man's wealth can buy anything except the truth? In a courtroom drama that will leave you breathless, a billionaire ex-husband, Julian Vance, brings his young, polished mistress, Amelia, to court, confident they can snatch his daughter away from the mother who raised her. They have the money, the power, and a perfectly crafted image of a happy new family. The ex-wife, Elara, has nothing but a mother's fierce love and a truth they think they've buried. But they didn't count on one thing: a judge who sees beyond the performance. Stay with us as we unravel how one simple question, a question no liar could ever answer, brought an entire empire of deceit crashing down, proving that some things can't be bought. The rain fell in relentless sheets against the window pane of Elara Vance's small two-bedroom apartment, blurring the autumn colors of the world outside into a watercolor wash. Inside, the world was warm and safe. The scent of cinnamon and baked apples hung in the air, a testament to the crumble cooling on the kitchen counter. 6-year-old Lily sat at the small wooden table, her tongue sticking out in concentration as she drew a family of bright pink unicorns under a shimmering rainbow. In the center was a queen unicorn with a flowing mane, and a smaller princess unicorn beside her. For Elara, this was everything. This quiet, unassuming peace was the paradise she had built from the ashes of her marriage. It had been 2 years since the divorce from Julian Vance was finalized. 2 years since she had walked away from the sterile, marble-halled mansion that had felt more like a museum than a home. She had left behind the designer clothes, the suffocating charity galas, and the man whose love had turned from a comforting warmth to a chilling, possessive frost. Julian, the CEO of Vance Global Corp., was a man who collected perfect things, perfect cars, perfect watches, a perfect wife. When she had proven to be imperfectly human, with thoughts and feelings that didn't align with his corporate strategy for life, he had replaced her. The replacement was Amelia Davenport, a woman 15 years younger, with a flawless Instagram feed and an ambition that glittered in her eyes as brightly as the diamonds Julian draped around her neck. Elara had tried to hate her, but mostly she just felt a profound sense of pity. A sharp, authoritative knock on the door shattered the domestic tranquility. It wasn't the gentle tap of a neighbor or the hurried rap of a delivery driver. This was a knock that demanded to be answered. Lily looked up from her drawing, her wide blue eyes, a perfect replica of her father's, though thankfully lacking his coldness, filled with curiosity. "I'll get it, sweetie. You finish your masterpiece," Elara said, forcing a smile as she smoothed her simple cotton dress. When she opened the door, a man in a crisp, dark suit stood on her welcome mat, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. He held a large manila envelope. He wasn't a salesman. He was a harbinger. "Elara Vance?" he asked, his voice devoid of any emotion. "Yes?" "You've been served." He thrust the envelope into her hands and turned, his footsteps echoing down the hallway before she could even process his words. Her hands trembled as she tore open the seal. The legal jargon swam before her eyes, dense and menacing, but certain phrases leapt out like sharks in a murky sea. Petition to modify custody, primary physical custody, unstable living environment, maternal unfitness, and at the bottom, the petitioner's name, Julian C. Vance. The air rushed from her lungs. A roaring filled her ears. He was trying to take Lily. The custody arrangement had been the one thing Julian had conceded easily during the divorce. He had visitation every other weekend, and on alternating holidays, a standard agreement he'd seemed almost bored with. He paid his child support, a pittance for a man of his wealth, but enough for Elara to manage, and otherwise seemed content to let her raise their daughter while he built his new life with his new showpiece partner. What had changed? She sank onto a small sofa, the papers crinkling in her white-knuckled grip. She read on, her blood turning to ice. The petition was a work of fiction, a grotesque caricature of her life. It painted her as a volatile, negligent mother. It cited her inadequate housing in the modest apartment. It twisted her decision to work part-time as a librarian, a job she loved, one that allowed her to be home when Lily finished school, into a lack of financial stability. It even included glossy, professionally taken photographs of Julian, Amelia, and Lily on a recent weekend trip to Disneyland. In the photos, Lily was holding a giant stuffed animal, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. The three of them were framed as the perfect family, while the documents in Ilara's hands painted her as the villain who stood in their way. The final page was an affidavit from Amelia Davenport. In it, Amelia described her deep and immediate maternal bond with Lily. She spoke of Lily thriving in her presence and confiding in her about the sadness and chaos of her home life with Ilara. A bitter, hysterical laugh escaped Ilara's lips. Chaos? Their life was built on routine, love, and bedtime stories. Sadness? The only time Lily was sad was when she had to pack her little suitcase to go to her father's cold, silent mansion for the weekend. The phone rang, jolting her. It was her sister, Chloe. "Ilara, you sound awful. What's wrong?" Through choked sobs, Ilara explained. "He's trying to take her, Chloe. He's saying I'm a bad mother. He and that woman, they're lying about everything." Chloe's voice was firm, a rock in Ilara's storm. "Okay, breathe. He's a bully, Ilara. This is what he does. He can't control you anymore. So he's going after the one thing he knows will destroy you. We're not going to let him. The first thing we do is call a lawyer." But Ilara knew what that meant. Julian had a legal team on a retainer that was the stuff of corporate legend. Sharks from the firm of Thorne and Associates, who billed thousands per hour. Ilara's savings account held just enough for 3 months' rent and an emergency car repair. She couldn't afford a shark. She could barely afford a goldfish. As she hung up the phone, Lily padded into the living room, holding up her drawing. "Look, Mummy, it's our family. Queen Mummy and Princess Lily." Ilara pulled her daughter into a fierce hug, burying her face in Lily's soft, apple-scented hair. The cheap paper of the court summons was pressed between them. The battle lines had been drawn. Julian had fired the first shot with the full force of his wealth and influence. He thought he could bury her in paper, in lies, in despair. He thought she would break. But as she held her daughter, Ilara made a silent vow. He had underestimated the power of a queen defending her tiny, precious kingdom. He had started a war, and for Lily, she would become a warrior. The first consultation was a brutal dose of reality. Ilara found a small, family law practice downtown. The lawyer, a kind but weary man named Mr. Davies, looked over Julian's petition with a grim expression. "This is a classic scorched earth strategy, Ms. Vance," he said, tapping a perfectly manicured photo of Julian and Amelia, beaming beside a stoic-looking Lily at a charity polo match. "Your ex-husband isn't just trying to win, he's trying to annihilate you. He's establishing a narrative. He is the stable, wealthy, and benevolent father, partnered with a loving and capable maternal figure. You are, well, you see what they're trying to paint you as." "But it's all lies," Ilara whispered, her voice hoarse. "Amelia has spent maybe 20 hours total with my daughter. Lily calls her Daddy's friend. She doesn't even know her last name." "The truth is often less important than the perception of truth in these cases," Mr. Davies sighed, adjusting his glasses. "They have resources. They will hire private investigators to follow you. They'll subpoena your financial records, your phone records. They'll interview your neighbors, your colleagues. They are looking for a single crack, and if they can't find one, they'll manufacture it. He quoted her his retainer fee. It was more money than she had to her name. She left his office feeling more hopeless than when she had entered. Julian's campaign began immediately, a coordinated assault on her reality. One afternoon, while she was volunteering for the school book fair, a smartly dressed woman approached her. She introduced herself as a child wellness advocate appointed by the court, a neutral third party to assess Lily's home life. But her questions were anything but neutral. "Miss Vance, is it true that you often serve Lily pre-packaged meals for dinner?" the woman, Miss Albright, asked, her pen poised over a notepad. "I sometimes make macaroni and cheese from a box. Yes, I work." "Is that a crime?" Elara replied, her cheeks flushing. "We just want to ensure Lily is receiving optimal nutrition. Julian and Amelia, for instance, have a private chef who prepares organic, farm-to-table meals." Later, Ms. Albright inspected Elara's apartment. She noted the worn spot on the sofa as dilapidated furniture. She commented on the single-pane windows as poorly insulated. She saw a loving, clean home and described it in her report as lacking the amenities and security of Mr. Vance's residence. The psychological warfare was even worse. Julian began to shower Lily with extravagant gifts, each one a thinly veiled criticism of Elara's means. A top-of-the-line tablet arrived, preloaded with educational apps, a clear jab at the library books Elara and Lily cherished. A pony was leased in Lily's name at an exclusive equestrian club near Julian's estate, with riding lessons scheduled during Elara's limited time with her daughter. One evening, Lily came home from a weekend with her father, clutching a doll that was a miniature replica of Amelia. It had the same sleek blonde hair, the same designer dress. "Amelia says she's my new bonus mommy," Lily said quietly, looking at the floor. Elara's heart fractured. "You only have one mommy, sweetheart," she said, her voice shaking with restrained fury. "And that's me." The next blow came from her own community. A neighbor, a woman with whom Elara had only ever exchanged pleasantries, provided a signed statement to Julian's lawyers. It claimed she often heard loud arguments and crying coming from Elara's apartment late at night. It was a complete fabrication. The only sounds from their apartment were laughter during movie nights and the soft murmur of Elara reading bedtime stories. But the lie was now on paper, a legal document designed to corrode her credibility. Desperate, Elara used the last of her emergency fund to hire a lawyer. Not a shark from a downtown firm, but Sarah Jenkins, a young, ferociously smart attorney whose small office was located above a bakery. Sarah had a reputation for fighting for underdogs. Sarah's office smelled of fresh bread and righteous indignation. She read through the file, her expression hardening with every page. "He's a classic narcissist with a bottomless wallet," she declared, tossing the file onto her cluttered desk. "They think they can bury us in paperwork and expert witnesses. They think you'll run out of money and hope. We're not going to let them." Sarah's strategy was different. They couldn't compete on a financial level, so they had to compete on the level of truth. "We need to build our own narrative, Elara. Not with lies and doctored photos, but with authenticity," Sarah explained, her eyes alight with purpose. "We'll get testimony from Lily's teacher, who knows how involved you are. We'll get her pediatrician to testify to her excellent health. We will document every single manipulative text Julian sends you every time he tries to use Lily as a pawn." They began the painstaking work of compiling their defense. Elara gathered years of photos, not staged portraits, but candid snapshots of Lily making mud pies in the park, of the two of them covered in flour from a baking mishap, of Lily asleep in her arms after a nightmare. She collected every hand-drawn card, every school project, every tangible piece of their shared life. One evening, while sorting through a box of old keepsakes, Elara found a small, worn-out teddy bear. Its name was Barnaby. It had been a gift from Elara's own grandmother. Barnaby was missing an eye, and his fur was matted from years of love. But Lily had slept with him every single night since she was born. He was her guardian, her confidant, the silent keeper of all her childhood secrets. When Lily went to Julian's for the weekend, Barnaby always stayed home. "Barnaby doesn't like Daddy's house," Lily had once confided. "It's too quiet and he gets lonely." Elara clutched the bear to her chest. It felt so insignificant compared to the mountain of evidence Julian was building. How could a one-eyed teddy bear compete with a leased pony and a private chef? Yet, in that moment, Elara felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in weeks. Not hope, exactly, but a deep, primal certainty. Julian and Amelia could build a facade of perfection. They could buy an image of a family, but they could not fabricate a history. They couldn't fake love. And this shabby little bear was proof. Julian Vance's mansion was a monument to cold, modern perfection. Glass walls overlooked acres of manicured lawns, and every piece of furniture was a designer original that looked too expensive to sit on. For Lily, it was less a home and more a museum she was forced to visit every other weekend. In this sterile environment, Julian and Amelia ramped up their efforts to manufacture the perfect family, documenting every moment for the upcoming court battle. Their social media became a curated gallery of forced happiness. There was Lily, perched stiffly on a pristine white sofa, between a beaming Julian and a radiant Amelia, with a caption written by Amelia. "Nothing more precious than family time. Feeling so blessed to have this little angel in my life. Bonus Mom, Rojo family is everything." The post garnered thousands of likes and fawning comments about what a beautiful family they were. Elara saw it and felt a nauseating wave of digital poison seep into her veins. The weekends at her father's house became a grueling schedule of performances for Lily. One Saturday, Amelia decided they would have a baking day. But instead of the messy, joyful chaos of baking with Elara, this was a sterile, staged event. The private chef, a stern woman named Ms. Dubois, had pre-measured every ingredient into small glass bowls. Amelia, dressed in a spotless white apron over a silk blouse, guided Lily's hands to stir the batter, all while Julian filmed on his phone. "Smile for Daddy, sweetie," Amelia chirped, her voice a little too bright. Lily tried to smile, but her heart wasn't in it. She missed the comfortable mess of her own kitchen, the way her mum would let her lick the spoon, the happy accidents that ended with flour on their noses. Here, when she spilled a little cocoa powder on the marble countertop, Ms. Dubois swooped in with a cloth and a disapproving frown. The resulting cookies were technically perfect, but they tasted like obligation. The video, of course, went online with the caption, "My two favorite girls making sweet memories." Another weekend, Julian announced they were going to a professional photography studio for a family portrait. Elara had a collection of candid photos of Lily, her face full of genuine laughter. Julian wanted a portrait, a carefully lit and posed image of possession. In the studio, a stern photographer directed them. "Mr. Vance, arm around Amelia. Amelia, place your hand on Lily's shoulder. Lily, chin up, big smile." Lily, squeezed between the scent of Julian's expensive cologne and Amelia's cloying perfume, felt like a doll being positioned. The smile she managed was a pale imitation of her real one. The resulting portrait was technically flawless, The three of them looked like they belonged on the cover of a magazine. But to anyone who truly knew Lily, her eyes were hollow. The photograph was a beautiful lie. Amelia tried desperately to forge a connection with Lily, but her attempts were always superficial. She bought her mountains of toys Lily didn't ask for, clothes Lily found uncomfortable, and books with no pictures. She didn't know that Lily hated itchy sweaters, that she preferred stories about dragons to stories about princesses, or that her favorite color was not pink, but the deep blue of the sky just before it gets dark. One night, Lily woke up from a nightmare in the vast, unfamiliar guest room at her father's mansion. She cried out for her mommy. Amelia was the one who came to the door, her silhouette framed by the hallway light. "What's wrong, darling?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "I had a bad dream," Lily whimpered, clutching her pillow. Barnaby the bear was, of course, safe at home with Ilara. "Oh, well, it's over now. Big girls don't cry about dreams," Amelia said, patting her awkwardly on the head. "Try to think of something happy, like our trip to Paris next month. Won't that be fun?" She lingered for a moment before retreating, leaving Lily alone in the dark, her fear and loneliness now compounded by a layer of shame. When Ilara had nightmares, she would crawl into bed with her, sing a soft, off-key lullaby about a silver moon, and stay until her breathing evened out and she drifted back to sleep, safe and loved. These weekends were chipping away at Lily. She grew quieter, more withdrawn. Her teacher, Mrs. Gable, noticed the change and called Ilara, concerned. "She seems distracted, Ilara, anxious. She's been drawing a lot of pictures of a little house with a big fence around it. When I asked her about it, she said it's a castle where the princess is stuck." The conversation solidified Ilara's resolve. This wasn't just about custody anymore. It was about rescuing her daughter. She relayed the teacher's concerns to her lawyer, Sarah, who meticulously documented everything. Sarah also made a discovery. Through a legal database, she found that Amelia Davenport had previously been engaged to another wealthy, older man. The engagement had been broken off abruptly. It was a long shot, but Sarah decided to dig deeper, hiring a discreet investigator with the last of Ilara's dwindling legal fund. "Julian is building a case based on a carefully constructed image," Sarah said, pacing her office. "He's showing the court a perfect family in a gilded cage. We need to show the judge what that cage is actually made of. Steel bars of control, loneliness, and performance. We need to show them that a small, loving apartment is a universe of freedom compared to his mansion of misery." The court date loomed, a black hole on the calendar, threatening to pull Ilara's entire world into it. Julian had his photos, his paid experts, and his false witnesses. Ilara had the truth, a fierce lawyer, a box of candid snapshots, and a one-eyed teddy bear. In the sterile logic of the law, she knew it might not be enough, but in the language of the heart, she knew it was everything. While Julian and Amelia were busy constructing their fortress of lies, Sarah Jenkins was meticulously searching for a crack in its foundation. "Every perfect facade has a weak point," she told Ilara during one of their late-night strategy sessions, surrounded by boxes of documents and lukewarm coffee. "People like Julian and Amelia are so focused on their own reflection that they get careless. We just have to find where." The investigator Sarah had hired, a grizzled ex-cop named Frank, came back with the first piece of leverage. Amelia's previous fiancé, a tech mogul from San Francisco named Marcus Thorne, had not just broken off the engagement. He had filed a restraining order against her. The records were sealed, but Frank had a source who remembered the case. "The story goes she wasn't just a gold digger," Frank reported, his voice gravelly over the phone. She was obsessive, faked a pregnancy to rush the wedding. When he found out and called it off, she started a smear campaign against him online, leaking company secrets she'd gleaned from him. The guy had to pay a fortune to make it all go away quietly. "Can we use this?" Elara asked, her heart hammering. "It's character evidence, which is tricky to get admitted," Sarah mused, scribbling notes. "The judge might see it as irrelevant to her ability to be a maternal figure. But if she gets on the stand and presents herself as a paragon of virtue and stability, and I can question her about Marcus Thorne, it could shatter her credibility. We'll keep it in our back pocket." The next crack came from an unexpected source, a disgruntled former executive assistant of Julian's, a woman named Clara, reached out to Sarah after seeing a news article about the upcoming custody battle. She had been fired from Vance Global Corp for a minor infraction and was burning with resentment. "Julian Vance is a monster," Clara told Sarah and Elara in a hushed meeting at a coffee shop, far from their respective neighborhoods. "He doesn't see people, he sees assets and liabilities. His own daughter is an asset to him right now, the final piece in his power couple branding with Amelia." Clara provided them with a treasure trove of information. She had emails in which Julian instructed his marketing team to leverage the family narrative for positive PR. She described how Julian had coached a distraught Amelia on exactly what to say in her affidavit against Elara, feeding her lines about Elara's instability. The most damning piece of evidence was a voice memo Clara had discreetly recorded during her last week at the company. In the recording, Julian could be heard laughing with his lawyer on the phone. "She's living in a shoebox with our daughter," Julian's voice sneered. "She can barely afford a real lawyer. We're going to bury her. By the time this is over, she'll be lucky to get supervised visitation once a month. Then we can finally get Lily into the right schools and away from her mother's mediocrity." Listening to it, Elara felt sick, but Sarah's eyes gleamed. "This is it," she breathed. "This shows intent. This isn't a concerned father. This is a corporate takeover of a child's life." Armed with this new information, Elara felt a surge of strength. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a fighter with ammunition. She continued to document everything on her end. She kept a journal, noting Lily's moods, her comments about her father's house, her moments of anxiety. One afternoon, Lily was doing her homework at the kitchen table. She was supposed to be practicing her letters, but instead, she was drawing. She drew a picture of two houses. One was small and colorful, with a sun smiling above it. In the doorway stood two stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands. The other house was huge and grey, with square, empty windows and a big black door. A tiny stick figure stood alone in front of it. "What's this, sweetie?" Elara asked gently. "That's our house," Lily said, pointing to the colourful one. "And that's Daddy's house. It's bigger, but the sun doesn't like to shine there." Elara carefully took the drawing. "Can I keep this, honey? It's so beautiful." This simple drawing, made with a child's unfiltered honesty, was more powerful than any of Julian's glossy photographs. It was the truth, in crayon. As the court date drew nearer, Julian's tactics became more aggressive. He filed a motion for an emergency psychological evaluation of Elara, claiming she was emotionally erratic. Elara was forced to spend hours with a court-appointed psychiatrist, a stern man whose services Julian was paying for. She answered his intrusive questions with quiet dignity, knowing it was another calculated move to harass and intimidate her. But the evaluation backfired. The psychiatrist, Dr. Alistair Finch, was a professional of integrity. His final report, while acknowledging the stress Elara was under, found her to be a remarkably resilient, deeply attached, and highly capable parent. He also noted that Lily displayed clear signs of anxiety and emotional conflict related to the custody dispute, particularly in relation to her father's new partner. Julian tried to have the report buried, but it was too late. It was now part of the official record. A small but significant crack in his armor. The night before the trial, Elara couldn't sleep. She sat in the quiet living room, the city lights a distant glitter. She looked at the box on her coffee table, the box of evidence. It contained Lily's crayon drawing, a printout of Julian's damning emails from Clara, the information on Amelia's past, and Dr. Finch's report. Tucked in the corner was Barnaby the bear, his one button eye seeming to watch her with ancient wisdom. Julian had an army of lawyers, a mountain of money, and a network of influence. She had a box of secrets and truths. Tomorrow, in a sterile courtroom, she would find out if that was enough. The courtroom was an intimidating cathedral of wood and marble, designed to make ordinary people feel small. Julian Vance, however, looked perfectly at home. He sat at the petitioner's table in a bespoke navy suit, the picture of calm authority. Beside him, Amelia Davenport was a vision of demure elegance in a cream-colored dress, her blonde hair pulled back in a tasteful chignon. They whispered to their lawyer, the infamous Marcus Thorne, a man whose silver hair and reptilian smile were legendary in legal circles. They looked less like litigants and more like a royal family gracing the court with their presence. Elara sat at the opposite table with Sarah Jenkins. She wore a simple grey dress, the nicest thing she owned. She felt like a sparrow facing down two polished eagles. Her hands were cold, and she clutched a pen so tightly her knuckles were white. The judge entered. Her name was Isabella Rossi, a woman in her late 50s with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She had a reputation for being tough, fair, and having an almost supernatural ability to detect falsehoods. Sarah had told Elara that if they had any hope, it rested with Judge Rossi seeing through the Vance's performance. The trial began with Marcus Thorne's opening statement. He painted a masterful, damning picture. He spoke of Julian's unwavering paternal devotion and his deep concern for his daughter's well-being. He described Amelia as a godsend, a stabilizing, nurturing influence in Lily's life. Then he turned his attention to Elara. With surgical precision, he portrayed her as a woman struggling, not just financially, but emotionally. He used words like chaotic, unpredictable, and embittered. He held up the glossy photos of Julian's mansion, contrasting them with pictures an investigator had taken of Elara's cramped apartment building. "Your Honor," Thorne concluded, his voice resonating with false sincerity, "this is not about punishing Ms. Vance. This is about elevating a child. It is about giving Lily the stability, the resources, and the loving, two-parent home she deserves. A home that Mr. Vance and Ms. Davenport can provide." Elara felt the eyes of the courtroom on her, and she had to fight the urge to shrink. It was as if he were describing a stranger. Julian was the first to take the stand. He was a perfect witness, charming, articulate, and completely convincing. He spoke of his love for Lily in carefully measured tones. He described Elara's erratic behavior after the divorce with feigned sadness. He twisted every one of her actions into a negative. Her desire for a simple life was a lack of ambition that sets a poor example. Her protectiveness of Lily was gatekeeping. "I just want what's best for my daughter," Julian said, looking directly at Judge Rossi, his blue eyes glistening with manufactured tears. "Amelia and I can give her the world, a world of opportunity, of security. All I want is for Lily to have the best." Next came Amelia. She was even more effective. She spoke in a soft, gentle voice, her hands clasped in her lap. She described her first meeting with Lily, framing it as an instant connection. She detailed the educational activities they did together, the organic meals she helped the chef prepare, the deep conversations she had with the 6-year-old. "Lily is such a bright, wonderful little girl," Amelia said, dabbing a corner of her eye with a tissue. "But she needs structure. She needs a calm environment. When she's with us, she blossoms. I love her as if she were my own. I just want to be the mother she deserves." Sarah's cross-examination was pointed, but Thorne was an expert at objecting, and Amelia was well rehearsed. She dodged questions about her limited time with Lily, reframing them as quality over quantity. When Sarah tried to bring up her past with Marcus Thorne, the other one, Thorne objected fiercely, and Judge Rossi sustained it, cautioning Sarah to stick to the present circumstances. Ilara's heart sank. A key piece of their strategy was gone. The day wore on, a parade of Julian's witnesses. The child wellness advocate, Ms. Albright, read from her biased report. The neighbor testified about the arguments she'd supposedly heard. Each testimony was another brick in the wall Julian was building around Lily. By the end of the day, the air in the courtroom felt heavy with defeat. Sarah was grim, and Ilara felt physically ill. They had presented Julian as a concerned father, Amelia as a loving stepmother, and Ilara as an unstable failure. The narrative was set. As they packed their briefcases, Julian walked past their table. He didn't look at Ilara, but he paused just long enough to murmur, "I told you I'd win. This is for the best." That night, Ilara couldn't eat. She just held Lily, who had been staying with Chloe during the court proceedings. She breathed in the scent of her daughter's hair and felt a primal fear grip her. The law, with all its logic and procedure, seemed to be siding with the liars. The theatre of the courtroom had favored the better actors. "Don't worry, Mommy," Lily whispered, as if sensing her mother's despair. "You're the queen. The queen always wins in the stories." Ilara held her tighter, praying to a god she wasn't sure she believed in, that her daughter's faith was not misplaced. Tomorrow, she would take the stand. It was her only chance to convince the judge that the stories were real. The next morning, when Ilara walked into the courtroom, the atmosphere was just as tense. But something inside her had shifted. Holding Lily the night before had extinguished her fear and replaced it with a cold, hard resolve. This wasn't about her pride or her pain anymore. This was for the little girl who still believed in fairy tale queens. When her name was called, she walked to the witness stand with a steady gait, her eyes fixed not on Julian or his lawyers, but on Judge Rossi. Sarah began her questioning gently, establishing Ilara's background, her career as a librarian, and her role as Lily's primary caregiver since birth. She had Ilara describe their daily routine, the silly songs they sang on the way to school, the after-school snack rituals, the nightly bedtime stories. It was a simple, quiet life, and as Ilara spoke, the narrative in the room began to subtly shift from one of lack to one of love. "Ms. Vance," Sarah said, her voice soft but clear, "Mr. Vance's attorney has painted a picture of your home as unstable and chaotic. How would you describe your home?" "My home is small," Ilara said, her voice gaining strength. "It's not a mansion, but it is a place of absolute safety and unconditional love. It is predictable. Lily knows that when she comes home from school, I will be there. She knows that when she has a nightmare, she can come into my room. She knows that her artwork is treated like a masterpiece and hung on the refrigerator. It's not chaotic. It's consistent. It's home." Then Sarah turned to the attacks on Ilara's financial stability. Mr. Vance suggests that because you are not wealthy, you cannot provide for Lily adequately. What do you say to that? Ilara looked directly at Julian. For the first time, he flinched. There are things money cannot buy, and those are the things I give my daughter in abundance. I give her my time, my full, undivided attention. I teach her that a person's worth is not in their bank account, but in their kindness. I teach her that imagination is a greater gift than a new toy. Mr. Vance can give her a pony, but I taught her how to be brave when she's scared. He can take her to Paris, but I can make a fort out of blankets in the living room that becomes a magical castle. I provide for her emotional well-being, her sense of security, and her moral character. In that, I am the wealthiest person she knows. The courtroom was silent. Even Marcus Thorne seemed momentarily taken aback by her quiet conviction. Now came the cross-examination. Thorne approached the stand, his smile gone, replaced by a predator's focus. He intended to tear her apart. "Miss Vance," he began, his voice dripping with condescension. "A magical castle of blankets is a lovely sentiment, but it doesn't pay for a top-tier education, does it? Or braces? Or a safe neighborhood?" "My neighborhood is safe, Mr. Thorne," Ilara replied calmly. "And the local public school has an excellent rating and a wonderful, dedicated teacher who knows my daughter by name, not as a tuition check." He grilled her about her job, her income, her worn-out car. He tried to twist her words, to make her sound bitter and jealous. He brought up an argument she and Julian had years ago, before the divorce, trying to paint her as emotionally volatile. But Ilara refused to take the bait. She answered each question with a simple, unadorned truth. She did not raise her voice. She did not cry. She simply stood her ground. For his final salvo, Thorne held up the beautiful, sterile family portrait of Julian, Amelia, and Lily. "Miss Vance, this photograph shows a happy, united family. Do you deny that your daughter appears happy here?" Ilara looked at the picture. She saw the stiff posture, the forced smile, the empty eyes of her child. "I see a little girl who is very good at doing what she is told," Ilara said, her voice breaking just a little, not with weakness, but with a mother's pain. "I don't see the little girl who laughs so hard she snorts. I don't see the girl with chocolate on her face who just finger-painted a masterpiece. I see a prop, a beautiful prop for a beautiful picture." She then turned to Judge Rossi. "Your Honor, may I show you a picture?" Before Thorne could object, Ilara pulled a worn photograph from her pocket. It was a cheap print from a drugstore. It showed her and Lily sitting on the floor in their pajamas, covered in stickers from a sticker book. Their heads were thrown back in genuine, unrestrained laughter. "This is my daughter when she's happy," Ilara said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's not glossy. It's not framed. It's just real." She placed the photo on the ledge of the witness box. The contrast between the two images was staggering. One was a perfect lie. The other was a messy, beautiful truth. As Ilara stepped down from the stand, she felt emotionally drained, but not defeated. She had not performed. She had simply told the truth of her love for her child. She sat down next to Sarah, who gave her hand a squeeze. Judge Rossi stared at the small, sticker-covered photograph for a long time, her expression unreadable. For the first time since the trial began, Ilara felt a tiny, fragile glimmer of hope. The judge had seen both pictures. Now, she just had to decide which one she believed. With Ilara's testimony concluded, the final phase of the trial began. Marcus Thorne called a rebuttal witness, a renowned child psychologist named Dr. Evelyn Reed, whose six-figure fee was being paid by Julian. Dr. Reed had met with Lily twice in the sterile environment of her father's mansion. Dr. Reed took the stand and spoke in authoritative academic tones. She presented a theory that Lily would benefit from the enhanced environmental opportunities and superior resource allocation of her father's home. She used clinical terms like socio-economic advantages and structured enrichment, effectively arguing that a wealthy life was inherently a better life. While the maternal bond with Miss Vance is evident, Dr. Reed stated coolly, in cases of such vast disparity in resources, the court must consider the long-term developmental benefits that the paternal home can offer. A stable, two-parent household with financial security often provides a more robust framework for a child's future success. During Sarah's cross-examination, she pushed back. Dr. Reed, in your 2 one-hour sessions with Lily, did you ever observe her in her home with her mother? No, that was not within the scope of my assessment, Dr. Reed admitted. Did you ask Lily about her friends at school? About her favorite bedtime story? About what she does when she's sad? Our sessions focused on standardized assessment protocols, the doctor replied evasively. So you assessed her framework, but not her feelings, Sarah pressed. Dr. Reed had no compelling answer. Throughout the testimony, Judge Rossi was preternaturally still. Her eyes moved from the witness to the lawyers, to Julian, to Amelia, and often to Elara. She was not just listening to the words, she was watching the people. She saw the way Julian smirked when his lawyer scored a point. She saw the fleeting look of panic in Amelia's eyes whenever Sarah's questions came close to a nerve. She saw the way Elara watched the proceedings, not as a legal game, but as if she were watching surgeons operate on her own heart. The judge had also taken note of the evidence submitted. She had looked through the portfolio of Julian and Amelia's perfect, staged photographs. She had read the glowing affidavit from Amelia, and she had studied Lily's crayon drawing of the 2 houses, the small, happy home and the large, lonely one. She kept coming back to that drawing. A child's art, she knew, was often a window directly into their soul, a truth unburdened by adult vocabulary. The final witness was Lily's teacher, Mrs. Gable, called by Sarah. She was a kind woman with warm eyes, who seemed completely unfazed by the intimidating courtroom. "Can you describe Lily Vance for the court?" Sarah asked. "Lily is a wonderful child," Mrs. Gable said with a smile. "She's bright, imaginative, and very kind to her classmates. She has a deep love of reading, which her mother has clearly nurtured. Have you noticed any changes in her behavior recently?" Mrs. Gable's smile faded. "Yes. In the last few months, since this dispute began, she has become more anxious. She's quieter. She sometimes has trouble focusing. On Mondays, after a weekend away, she often seems very tired and sad." Marcus Thorne tried to discredit her on cross-examination. "Mrs. Gable, you are not a psychologist, are you? You are merely a first-grade teacher." "That is correct," Mrs. Gable replied, unintimidated. "I'm not a psychologist. I am, however, an expert in 6-year-old children, and I know a happy child when I see one, and I know a child who is struggling." She said it with such simple authority that Thorne had no further questions. The testimony was complete. All that remained were the closing arguments. The air was thick with anticipation. It felt as though the scales of justice were balanced on a knife's edge. Judge Rossi looked over her notes, her face a mask of judicial neutrality. She glanced from the pile of glossy 8x10 photos submitted by Julian's team to the small, sticker-adorned snapshot and the child's drawing submitted by Elara. Wealth versus warmth, perfection versus presence, a gilded cage versus a loving home. She cleared her throat, and the room fell silent. "Before we proceed to closing arguments," she said, her voice commanding the attention of everyone present, "I have a few questions of my own. I would like to recall Ms. Amelia Davenport to the stand." A ripple of surprise went through the courtroom. Julian and Amelia exchanged a nervous glance. Marcus Thorne stood up, a hint of confusion on his face. "Your Honor?" "Miss Davenport, please," the judge repeated, her tone leaving no room for argument. Amelia smoothed her dress and walked back to the witness stand, her confident stride from the day before, now noticeably less certain. She sat down, folded her hands, and gave the judge a polite, questioning smile. Ilara's heart was pounding against her ribs. She didn't know what this meant, but she knew that Judge Isabella Rossi was not a woman who did things without a reason. The judge's gaze was fixed on Amelia, and it was as sharp and penetrating as a surgeon's scalpel. The final act was about to begin, and it would not be directed by the lawyers. Amelia Davenport sat in the witness box, forcing a serene smile. She had been coached for hours by Julian's legal team. She was ready for any question about finances, about her schedule, about her love for Julian. She was prepared for anything they had anticipated. Judge Rossi leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving Amelia's face. The courtroom was so quiet that the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed loud. "Miss Davenport," the judge began, her voice calm and even. "Throughout this trial, you have testified at length about the deep, maternal bond you have formed with Lily. You've described her to be blossoming in your care. You have positioned yourself not just as a future stepmother, but as a superior mother figure to Ms. Vance." "Yes, Your Honor," Amelia said, her confidence returning. "I love Lily very much. I only want what's best for her." "I see," the judge said, her expression unreadable. "You've told this court about the organic meals you provide, the educational trips you take, the sophisticated toys you've purchased. You clearly believe that these things are what is best for her. A stable and enriching environment is crucial for a child's development, Your Honor," Amelia recited, a line she had clearly rehearsed. Judge Rossi nodded slowly. "It can be, but a mother's bond is built on more than enrichment, Ms. Davenport. It is built on intimacy, on knowing a child's heart, on being there for the small, unglamorous moments, the moments that don't make for a good social media post." The judge paused, letting the weight of her words settle in the silent room. Julian was now staring intently, a flicker of unease crossing his features. Ilara held her breath. Then Judge Rossi asked her question. It wasn't about law, it wasn't about finances, it was about love. "So, Ms. Davenport, please tell the court, what is the name of the stuffed animal that Lily has slept with every single night of her life?" The question hung in the air, simple, yet devastatingly profound. Amelia's polished smile froze on her face. Her perfectly made-up eyes went wide, a deer in the headlights. The silence stretched, becoming immense, unbearable. She looked desperately toward Julian, but he could offer no help. He looked just as clueless. His brow was furrowed, searching his memory for a detail he had never bothered to learn. The stuffed animal?" Amelia stammered, her voice suddenly a full octave higher. "Yes," the judge replied, her voice like ice. "The one she cannot sleep without, the one she confides her secrets to. You've told me you have a deep maternal bond. You want to be her mother. So tell me his name." Amelia's mind raced. She cycled through a Rolodex of generic names. "Fluffy," she guessed, her voice a weak squeak. "Bunny? Princess?" Ilara closed her eyes, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. His name is Barnaby, she thought. His name is Barnaby, and he's missing an eye, and he smells like home. You don't know, Judge Rossi stated. It wasn't a question, it was a verdict. You have no idea. Amelia crumbled. The facade of the perfect bonus mom, so carefully constructed over months, disintegrated into nothing under the weight of that one simple question. Julian buys her so many toys, she floundered, trying to recover. It's hard to keep track. Stop, the judge commanded, her voice ringing with authority. She turned her steely gaze from the humiliated woman on the stand to the man at the petitioner's table. Mr. Vance, do you know the name of your daughter's most cherished possession? Julian stood, his face a mask of fury and shock. Your Honor, this is ridiculous. What does a toy have to do with my daughter's welfare? It has everything to do with it. Judge Rossi's voice boomed, silencing him instantly. It proves that for all your money, for all your experts, for all your polished presentations, you have failed to learn the simplest, most fundamental thing about your own child. You have been so busy building a narrative that you forgot to build a relationship. You are not seeking custody out of love. You are seeking it as an acquisition. Another perfect accessory for your perfect life. She turned back to Amelia. And you, Miss Davenport, are a willing accomplice in this charade. You have sought to usurp the role of a mother without doing any of the actual work of motherhood, the comforting, the listening, the knowing. You don't want a child, you want a prop. The judge's gavel came down with a thunderous crack. Petition to modify custody is denied, with prejudice, she declared. Furthermore, based on the evidence of emotional manipulation and harassment presented in this court, I am modifying the current agreement. Mr. Vance's visitation will be reduced and will be fully supervised for a period of no less than 6 months. He and Miss Davenport are ordered to have no unsupervised contact with the child until Mr. Vance completes a court-mandated co-parenting course. So legal and physical custody is awarded to the mother, Ilara Vance. This court is adjourned. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Julian stood, apoplectic, his face a mottled red. Amelia was weeping silently. Marcus Thorne was already packing his briefcase, defeated. Ilara sat, stunned, as Sarah threw her arms around her. The relief was so overwhelming it felt like a physical force, washing away months of fear and pain. She had won. The Queen, as Lily had believed, had won. Her shabby, beautiful truth had triumphed over their expensive, hollow lie. All because of a one-eyed teddy bear named Barnaby, and a wise judge who knew that the heart of a child is the only evidence that truly matters. In the end, it wasn't the billionaire's army of lawyers or his perfectly staged photographs that won the day. It was the quiet, unshakable truth of a mother's love. Ilara's story is a powerful reminder that in the battle for a child's heart, authenticity will always triumph over performance. Julian and Amelia thought they could purchase a family, but they learned the hard way that the most valuable things in life, love, trust, and the secrets whispered to a worn-out teddy bear, can never be bought. A mother's bond, built on a foundation of sleepless nights, scraped knees, and bedtime stories, proved to be an unbreakable fortress. What did you think of this incredible story of justice? Did Judge Rossi's final question give you chills? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were moved by Ilara's fight for her daughter, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that will inspire and amaze you. Thank you for listening.